our host also has a Twitter account, Dave Simon MMA. It is Dave Simon.
What host doesn't have a Twitter account these days, though, right? Everybody's got one of those gimmicks.
Yeah, no, it's true. Actually, I do a hit in the States with a hockey guy in the Northeast who refuses to go on Twitter.
What's his problem?
I don't know. He was on Twitter for like 3 weeks, didn't like it, and got off of it. And he's an older gentleman, but still, really no excuse when you're trying to get the word out about your program.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So, Dave, what is happening? A busy week. Last week we said 3 events in 8 days, and now we're through all 3 of those events. It's been 8 days. What is...
No, it hasn't.
What do you mean? No, it hasn't.
There's another event on Wednesday night. 3 events. We had this past Wednesday, 1.
Right, yes.
Last night, 2.
And next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Usually
I got it wrong.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, Dave, fine. So
last night, new champion Anthony Pettis submitted Benson Henderson in the first round to become the new 155-pound champion of the world.
And you warned us, Dave. You said on the program Pettis had beaten Henderson in WEC previous to coming into UFC.
Yep.
And so you're not totally surprised.
No, I mean, I thought that this fight could go either way. What surprised me was the way it finished. It finished quite abruptly. You didn't see a tap from Benson Henderson. It was a verbal submission. So Pettis threw up an armbar, and the fight just ended. So people were a little bit confused as soon as it ended. But Anthony Pettis just sunk in a perfect armbar in the first round. Benson Henderson caught like a wheel kick that Pettis threw and took him down, landed in his guard, decided to work from there, throw some punches, threw an arm in there, got that arm caught, and had to submit and lose his championship in just 4 minutes, 31 seconds.
Now, any thoughts, any comments coming out of Henderson after the fight?
Yeah, he said it was a high-level armbar, his arm hurt, and he gave his props to Anthony Pettis. There's nothing more that he could do. He was very respectful in the way that he talked about Anthony after the fight, and he really went out with great dignity. And I think that Benson Henderson will work his way back up the ranks in the lightweight division and get another title shot. I don't think we've heard the last of Benson Henderson. The guy's just 29 years old, and he's now just 7-1 in the UFC. Nobody's been able to beat this guy in the UFC, and I think that he's going to continue, win fights, and eventually get a rematch, maybe with Anthony Pettis or with whoever's the champion when Benson works his way back up.
Game points here on TSN 690. We're talking some fight. Elsewhere on that card, Dave, what else stuck out for you?
I mean, a lot. It was a very interesting card, top to bottom. Josh Barnett in the co-main event beating Frank Mir. That stoppage a little bit premature. Barnett, Mir, and Dana White all saying that it was a little bit of an early stoppage. Barnett smothering Mir against the cage, beating him with several punches, and it was a knee to the face that dropped Frank Mir. Mir wasn't quite out. The referee jumped in a little bit too early, but I think Barnett was on his way to beating Frank Mir. Barnett was all over Mir, though, and Mir really wasn't in that fight.
Yeah, Barnett was the guy who was featured in the Gazette on Saturday, and I'm curious, Dave, if you could give the listeners like me who maybe aren't hardcore followers of MMA and UFC the, I guess, accountability and the history and the stories with the referees. So how are they regulated? Is there any sort of recourse for a guy maybe calling a fight early? Does that mean he gets demoted or not, the big fight next time around? And who assigns the referees?
Well, it's the State Athletic Commission. So last night they were in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So it was the Wisconsin State Athletic Commission. And look, they don't hold a lot of big fights in Wisconsin. These referees that were there don't have a lot of experience. And there are certain referees that are more, the international UFC referees. Yves Lavigne was there. Herb Dean was there. And you see those guys all over the place, be it here in Montreal, in Las Vegas, or last night in Milwaukee. And, they'll travel around for the bigger fights, but there's a shortage of top-level referees in the sport. And when you go to these places like Wisconsin, where they don't have a lot of MMA and those refs don't have a lot of experience, the local referees have to call the fights. I mean, there are 12 to 13 fights on UFC cards, and one referee will do maybe 4 fights a night at most. So you need at least 3 or 4 referees on the night, and with Yves Leving and Herb Dean there, you had room for 2 other guys to step in that weren't as well known, weren't as experienced in the referee department, and that's what you got last night with the Barnett Mir stoppage, a guy that just was not as experienced as some of his counterparts.
But if that's a big fight, then why wouldn't they have one of those other more experienced guys doing that one?
You got to ask the State Athletic Commission
They're the
in
ones
Wisconsin.
that signed, yeah.
Yep.
So by that extension, then, refereeing in Montreal and Quebec, pretty good? When you go to the Bell Center to check out a show, what are your thoughts normally?
It depends. If the UFC brings in guys like they have Josh Rosenthal, well, actually not Josh Rosenthal, he's in jail right now on another deal.
Okay.
Yeah, he got caught. He had a big marijuana grow operation in California. He's in jail for 3 to 4 years right now. But he was a very good referee. Dan Miragliotta does refereeing. Yves Leving is from here, and he does a lot of the shows here for the UFC and stuff like that. But there are still, local referees here in the province of Quebec that work with the commission that aren't very good. And you see them, and I don't want to embarrass anybody. I don't want to put their names out there, but they know who they are, and hardcore fight fans know who they are. And I have put their names out there before because when you're that bad, you're dangerous.
Somebody needs to take a look at
somebody needs to say something and say, hey, you shouldn't be refereeing. And I actually hammered on a couple referees for a while, and one of them doesn't referee anymore in MMA. So maybe the word got through, but a lot of these guys, be it here in Quebec, Wisconsin, anywhere, they're boxing guys. When you talk about athletic commissions and referees, they deal with boxing and have dealt with boxing for a long time, so they don't understand a lot of times the nuances on the ground or just the sport of MMA.
Guys? Who's you can't just put a boxing guy in there. He's got to have a little bit of training. Does the UFC or maybe a Vegas commission, or do they have somebody who's a guru who's going around training these people?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about Las Vegas, you're dealing with the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and their referees are more professional. It is a, fight capital. It's the fight capital of the world. So there you have more seminars and meetings and stuff within the refereeing community. But really, it's the Athletic Commission, and it's their discretion, and they're going to throw in whoever they want. And if you want to have fights in Wisconsin or wherever, you're going to have to deal with these local athletic commissions, and it's up to the local commissions to maintain their own integrity. And when you look at last night, you got to question certain referees in Wisconsin now. It's up to them, and they take the blame, and they'll take the heat for it too. They could send them to, Herb Dean's got a refereeing school. He does seminars. He teaches people, and he's arguably the best in the game. So there are places where referees can go and learn, but it's up to them. It's up to the athletic commissions. The UFC's hands are pretty much tied, so you really have to take it upon yourself to become a better official.
Dave Simon talking some MMA here on Game Points with Matthew Ross. Dave, as usual, Dana White always out there commenting after these events. Anything interesting come out after last night?
Well, I think the most interesting thing post-fight of UFC 164 is the fact that Anthony Pettis may have tweaked his knee in the fight, and there are questions as to who he would fight next or when he would fight next now. Hopefully Pettis isn't out for too long, but you look at potential opponents for Anthony Pettis. TJ Grant was the guy that was supposed to get that shot last night.
Was also injured, yeah.
He was injured, but TJ wants the shot at Pettis. He's come out and said, I want my shot. I've earned my shot, and I should get the next title shot. I agree with TJ Grant. At the same time, Anthony Pettis called out the 145-pound champion Jose Aldo after his fight because he was supposed to fight Aldo on August 3rd. Actually, Pettis was supposed to drop down to 145. He got hurt, and then he wasn't going to fight until, who knows, TJ Grant got hurt. Pettis was able to step in. So there's a lot of confusion as to where Anthony Pettis goes, what Jose Aldo's going to do. Are we going to see a super fight between the 155 and 145-pound champion? What weight would that be at, either at 45s or 55s? And what does TJ Grant do now? Does he get the title shot against Pettis? Is he going to have to fight again? So all that, I think, is the big question today, and Dana White really having no answers. We're going to have to wait over the next couple of days to see, after the doctors have checked on Anthony Pettis' knee, how long he's going to be out for.
All right, elsewhere, what is the next big thing to look forward to, next big storyline?
UFC Fight Night 28. 8 going down this Wednesday night. It'll be in Brazil. It'll be Glover Teixeira taking on Ryan Bader in the main event. Yushin Okami and Jacare Souza in the co-main event. A lot of really good fights coming up Wednesday night. And the next pay-per-view from the UFC will be right here in Canada, in Toronto, September 21st. UFC 165, Johnny Bones Jones defending the UFC light heavyweight title against Alexander Gustafsson. And
at the Air Canada Centre?
That's right. I'll be making the trip once again to Toronto to check that out. Should be a great, great card. Looking forward to that.
Now, where do you sit when you go to these things as part of the media?
I sit close to the cage. Close. Very close. The UFC takes care of me.
How is the media food? Do they have, like, media refreshments?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. The ACC is pretty good. It's better than the Bell Center. The ACC is better than the Bell Center. The best media dinner, though, was at the Rogers Center in Toronto when they did the big stadium show. The meal there was fantastic.
Funny story about the Rogers Center, actually. They charge at Blue Jay and Argonaut games, but for Grey Cup week, as Dave pointed out with UFC at the Skydome, I don't think they charge you. Do they charge you at all?
I'm not paying for food. Are you kidding me?
They charge you $20, but the food was phenomenal. I do agree with Dave on that.
That's why people do radio, to get a free meal. That's
I've heard that.
Well known.
Yeah. I've gotten a couple in my day, sure.
I've eaten about 4 or 5 plates worth.
You bring the wide sweatpants on those events, right? Big pockets as well.
You don't eat lunch that day, right?
Grey Cup Sunday, I want to show Dwayne Ford and the big boys that I can eat with the best of the best. I certainly did.
Yes, Mo, nothing impresses serious journalists more than the guy at the table who's eating with like 3 dinner trays.
Well, there was Farhan Lalji.
That's a great way to do it.
There was Jermaine Franklin, Farhan Lalji, both at TSN. I believe, Dwayne was there along with Rod Black, and they were impressed.
Really?
They were proud of the Montrealer.
So you didn't hear any of them whispering to each other, who's a joker on the other end with the bottomless stomach? Nothing like that? No comments like that?
I had been mistaken for Nabil Karim at the mothership in Toronto once or twice. Yeah.
That's odd. All right. It is Game Points here on TSN 690. Thank you very much, Dave. Of course, Dave is ringsidereport.net and Dave Simon MMA on Twitter. And I was just going to ask you this, Dave. I'm surprised. Usually you cut me off and say, hey, I'm on for Wrestling Uncensored a little later on today. And you hadn't done that. So I was going to ask you right at the end of the segment here. At the end of Mets and Nats tonight here on Sunday Night Baseball, you'll have a live edition of Wrestling Uncensored
with a special guest, Rob Van Dam.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you can do it properly.
That's how we do it. Rob Van Dam. It's Wrestling Uncensored episode 150, our last Sunday night show of the summer before we go back to our
late night
normal
Saturday.
time of a Saturday. So we're going to be going back to Saturday next week, but tonight, our last Sunday night show, Wrestling Uncensored episode 150 with Rob Van Dam. Doesn't get better than that.
Stefano, you going to be listening?
Definitely, and it's Rob Van Dam.
Wow. All right. Now, if you don't know who he is,
it's good.
And you're a casual wrestling fan,
shame on you if you don't know who he is.
If you're a casual wrestling fan, you don't know who Rob Van Dam is, you shouldn't call yourself a casual wrestling fan.
He hasn't been in WWE for a little while, so if you haven't seen, maybe you picked up the sport a few years ago and you haven't seen him in a while, he's back. Just go Google him. You'll be impressed.